Welcome back. I am going to try to break 2100 today, and if I do, I'm going to stop the video right then, just because I don't want to lose and go back down. So anyway, we're going to look for checks, captures, and threats. I do have checks here in this position, but they do not look good. I can check either here or here or here with my queen. All of those appear to lose my queen. One loses the queen to the pawn, loses the queen to the bishop, loses the queen to the rook. And even if there were some sort of sacrifice to get a piece out of position, I don't think there's any follow-up there. There is this check, which also loses a queen. And there's this one. That one I almost didn't see. If you've been following in the past, I have trouble... I do not have trouble usually seeing moves that are toward the position or the area that I'm focusing on, but I have trouble seeing especially queen moves that look like they go away from where I'm attacking but still attack. But I'm trying to practice to see those. So there is that check. And in that case, what can black do? They cannot block. None of their pieces can get to the two intervening squares between me and the king. So if I check on e4, the king has to move. But it has three choices. Also along this diagonal with the same idea is the bishop checking on d3. And again, there's nothing that can block on those intervening squares. And this time the king only has one choice. So I'm thinking that might be better. Because if the queen checks, the king can move to any of these three squares, g8, h8, or g7, to get out of check. But if the queen stays here and it's blocking those three squares and the bishop checks, the king only has one choice. So that might be better. But if that's what happens and the king moves, I check on d3 and the king moves to h8, what's my follow-up? That's a good question. Because I still can't get my queen in there due to the reasons that I mentioned earlier. The pawn, the bishop, and the rook guard all three of those squares. And I don't have another piece waiting in the wings. I do have... I mean, this pawn then would be unguarded in that case. So something like that would be threatening mate, maybe, but no, because then the bishop would come down to guard that pawn. Okay. What if there was a way to get one of these pieces out of position before I check with the bishop? That's another thought I'm having. For example, if before I check with the bishop, I check with the knight. Knight to g5 check. It does, I mean, at that point, the king would have all sorts of choices of where it wanted to go. But most of those would then lead to a discovered check after I moved the knight out of the way. If they didn't capture. If I went here and I don't know, the king went to one of these places, then I could move the knight there. It would be check from my queen and I would be threatening their queen. So I assume they would capture at that point. But I don't know. Also, I don't know that would help because it would give the king extra places to go. If they captured with the pawn, I could then check with queen to h5 or with the bishop. Maybe it's the bishop first. bishop first, which forces the king here. But then that's not check. Man, these are hard. Okay, let me pause and give this a think. Okay, it didn't take me too long to think of this. If I check first with the bishop on d3, as we've already said, the king is then forced to h8. There's no other legal move, I'm pretty sure. I've missed a few in the past, but I think that's right. Then, if I put my queen here, I'm threatening to take this pawn and coming in for a checkmating sequence. But with the queen on h5, the pawn can't move, and I think the only way black can defend that pawn would be to drop the bishop back one. If the bishop dropped back one, I think I could then bring the knight in. Wait, that's not threatening anything, though. I was going to say they couldn't take with the pawn at that point because my queen would be here and the king would be here and the pawn would just be pinned. But the knight's not threatening anything in that position. The knight if the king has already moved back to h8, the knight isn't threatening anything. It's not threatening the bishop. It's not, I mean, and this pawn's guarded, that pawn's guarded, so it wouldn't be threatening either one of those things. There's got to be something else. And one of those two, I think, has to be... Okay, what about the queen move first? Doesn't matter which one of those that the king chooses. This threatens mate here. And then what would black do? Okay, or the bishop first for that matter. The bishop first, again, as I said, is more forcing because the king only has one choice. And then moving the queen to e4 threatens mate. Is there anything that black can do about that? Can they stop that? I don't think they can. What about the other way? Can they stop it this way too? I don't think they can stop it this way either. Even if they have more choices. If I drop my bishop back at that point, I don't think they can stop mate at that point. Yes, they could, I think. If I checked first with the queen, and the king moved here, say, and then I brought the bishop up to threaten mate, the rook can come over, and the king can get out. But if I check first with the bishop, it can't go there where the rook can give it an escape square. And then I come queen to e4, threatening mate on h7. I don't think there's anything they can do. So that's what I'm going to try. Okay, that was it. Now, the reason that I decided on bishop instead of queen was because I don't think they can stop this checkmate threat. But I'm going to give it another look. There's no piece that can move. If I move the queen to h4, they don't have any piece that can guard my target square. Because this bishop and queen are too far away. The rook coming over cannot guard h7. The bishop moving around cannot guard h7 or block my path to it. I think that has to be it. Okay, and that's mate. Oh, it said the target time was 31 seconds. Well, that took me 8 minutes. And I still have to do one more puzzle to get 2100. I know you can't see it because my video player's in the way, but there's no theme listed with this puzzle. So I'm going to add the theme of mate in 3. That was 1, 2, 3. And also attacking the castled king. I will add both of those. Okay, next puzzle. If I get this right, I break my record. Well, I've already broken my record. This is my highest ever puzzle score. So let's see what we can do. There is a check. That just looks like it loses a bishop, and I don't have a really good follow-up. I mean, obviously I can follow up with this check after the king recaptures, but the king doesn't have to recapture. It could just move aside. So I don't think that bishop check. It's nice that it's there. It's nice that it's there, because it might come in handy. If I try to threaten checkmate by moving my queen here first, I think black could block with either of these pawn moves. That one would block my checkmate attempt. That would block my checkmate attempt. That would block my checkmate attempt, for that matter. Now this move, if they blocked with that, for example, if I had my queen on d3 and they blocked with the f-pawn, that would leave their e-pawn hanging. And in a game that might be significant, that I could then pick up that pawn. But you may have already noticed this battery lined up here. I don't know if that's important. I know that my bishop is guarding this f-pawn, so I'm not too worried about this. But if I do have to move my bishop at some point, that becomes much more dangerous. Yes, my king can easily move out of check, but then the bishop will trade for my rook. So that's something to look out for. But that's the only check I see. And this is the only threat of checkmate that I see. But like I've pointed out, there's 3 pretty obvious ways that black can block that threat. So it's not a really strong threat. What else do I have? I have some captures, but they don't look great like this, because black has 3 pieces guarding that knight. So that doesn't look great. Right now, this doesn't look good at all, because the pawn is guarding the other pawn. There are threats that I see like this. That might be a good, not a bad threat. It forces that bishop to skedaddle, as the case may be. The bishop can't go backwards because of its own pieces, and if it captured the b pawn, I would take it back. But I would lose 2 pawns for a bishop. I think that would leave me in control of this open file to some extent. But yeah, I think in that case the smartest move for the bishop would be just to take, because again, they would get 2 pawns out of that. If I threatened with b4, they took here, I would take with my bishop, and they would have only picked up 1 pawn for it. And then their queen would be under threat from my bishop and would have to go somewhere. So that looks promising, b4. I don't know what else I have. I'm looking around the board. I'm not seeing too much. Black's position is pretty solid right now, with the rook guarding this. The pawn's still pretty solid in front of the king. I have a discovered attack coming at some point here where the rook is going to point at my queen. So, she might need to get out of there. I'm going to pause and look around for a minute just so I don't waste your time. That looks like the best thing to me, is to move the b4 pawn. It forces a response from black. I don't know what that response is going to be. It might not be moving the bishop. It might be moving the knight. And if that's the case, then am I going to move my queen? For example, here. Possibly. I suppose they could also move their knight someplace else. Wherever they move the knight, this rook will open up and be pointing at my queen. But I think I have a relatively safe square here. That almost makes... No, you know what? I was going to say, if I move there first, that's going to prompt black to do one of the blocking moves that I already mentioned. Here or here. But if I move this first, b4 first, that's a direct threat to the bishop, and I might pick up the bishop. But if white tries to counter that with danger levels by threatening my queen, then I could just put the queen here and still be threatening the bishop. I'm going to try it. That was it. And they did the knight move. Okay. So, before I just snap move what I had considered, let's see what the options are. One option is to go ahead and take the bishop. Then the pawn would be threatening the queen. So at that point, I would be up a piece. Right, because we're even on material right now. Yes, we're completely even on material right now, including pawns. So I would be up 3 and threatening the queen. They would take if they took my queen and I took theirs, I would still be up 3. But then if they took the rook, or either rook, and I took back with the other rook, that would be an even trade. 5 for 5. And I would still be up a piece. Does that make sense? So I'm actually thinking of just taking the bishop now, rather than getting the queen out of danger. However, if I take the bishop, they don't have to take my queen. They could just take the pawn. And then I would only be up 2 points of material. But then I could get my queen out of danger then, I think. So, rather than getting my queen out of danger first, if I get my queen out of danger first, now that the knight's out of the way, their bishop can escape. So I think I take the bishop. Okay, and then I take their queen. Because if I take the rook now, I'm down. Oh, it's still going. Okay. Well, then okay. Oh, and a little thing popped up. It says puzzles. Oh, it went away. It said puzzles 2100. I got a new achievement on chess.com. Okay. Well, we reasoned our way through that one. And they did a few things that were that were surprising there near the end. The knight move especially, I didn't really expect that. I was already up a piece. So I don't know if that was their best move or not. You at least can you back up a move? Yeah. Here, after I had taken the rook, yes, their knight's in danger, but I think at this point, wouldn't it be smarter to preserve it? I think in general, once you're down material, you tend to not want to trade off more pieces. Even trades would hurt them, because when they did that next move, and I took back, now I'm up 1 piece, 2-1. Whereas before I was up 3-2, which, as you know from mathematics, 3-2 is not as great a ratio as 2-1. I have twice as many pieces as they do now. But anyway, that last move surprised me for that reason. But we did it. 2100. Thank you for watching, and come back next time.